We're always telling your stories, and it's time someone tells ours. We're humans first, journalists second. We chose this career to give you a voice. Now we're voicing ours. It's true, journalism has much room for improvement, but not all hope is lost, and we want your trust back by humanizing one journalist at a time. We're sharing with you what we go through to bring you the news. The pain, the tears, the trauma, and the mental health struggles. It's painful, and sometimes we even work 2 jobs to make ends meet. But we all have something in common. The passion, the joy, and the love we feel for storytelling and holding the powerful accountable. That includes holding ourselves accountable. So here are stories from us. This is how we want to help improve the news industry. The Awakened Journalist is proud to present Media Healers by Emiliana Molina Fajardo. Hi everyone, welcome back to The Awakened Journalist and our special project Media Healers. Thanks for being here with us today. This interview will be in English. Carolina Valladares is a prominent news anchor and broadcast journalist with 15 years of experience in news and having worked in more than 20 different countries across the globe. She currently works at Voice of America, the state-owned international radio broadcaster of the United States of America, and it is the largest and oldest US-funded international broadcaster. VOA produces digital TV, radio content in 47 languages, which it then distributes to affiliate stations around the globe. Carolina focuses on high-end profiles and one-on-one interviews, and most recently, she interviewed the Prime Minister of Norway, Jonas Gahr Store, the Vicepresident of El Salvador, Félix Ulloa, and she's extremely skilled in Middle East and Latin American politics. She also has a master's degree in international security studies from UCL. Carolina's been a news anchor in Colombia, a war correspondent in the Middle East, working for some of the major networks in the world like the BBC. She's also covered terrorist attacks, natural disasters such as earthquakes, terrorist organizations such as the Islamic State or Al-Qaeda, the war in Syria, Pope Francis, royal weddings, and much more. So without further ado, Carolina, welcome and thank you for being here with us today.
Hi, Emiliana. Very thankful for your beautiful words.
Thank you, Caro. Okay, so let's start with what I always ask everyone. Why did you first decide to become a journalist?
I think that was a matter of timing. I think there is always in journalism something inside ourselves that at some point is going to explode. It doesn't matter if it's at the age of 8 or 12. In my case, I was around 8 years old. It was the first war in Iraq, actually. And as a kid that used to move a lot around and ask and inquire, and I always be with the eyes wide open. I asked my teachers, why are we not celebrating Carnival this year? What's happening? Because as a kid, even people don't see it, but you start realizing about patterns. And I started realizing things were changing around myself, my environment, things that I was giving for granted. So I remember always asking and raising the hand and asking my teachers, what's happening? And they told me there is a war in Iraq. We have soldiers and we're a religious school. We cannot be happy. We cannot celebrate. And at the same time, my grandparents also always I used to watch the news with them, lunchtime break during the school, go to their house. And they start asking me, go to the room. Why? I ask my grandparents, because there is a war. So I realized at a very, very young age how wars, conflict affect not in one place to another place. And if it affects the life of an 8-year-old in a remote country, how can it affect the life of people who live in the spot, or even if you are older? So I always was very fascinated about journalism and current affairs.
Yeah, and at 9 years old, when we were speaking over the phone, you told me there was a phrase that when you asked and when you started exploring your curiosity, one of your teachers answered something. Do you want to share that with us? Because for a 9-year-old to remember that just shows how big of an impact this war had on you.
Yes, my last name is Valladares, so I always used to sit the last one in the corner because it was alphabetically done. And I remember raising my hand to my teacher, Marina, and no one said, when she said, this year there is no carnival, no one said anything. And I was like, when is someone going to raise their hand? And I raised my hand and she said that. And I remember I have photographic memory and have I remember the precise moment, and thinking, why some people ask and some people don't ask questions. Then you wonder sometimes, and I believe like that's why journalists, we are born journalists, just precisely because we always have the initiative of raising our hands when something doesn't work in our brains. When we think something's happening, something is weird, something doesn't match or work, we always are there asking the question. And that comes with you since you are very young. And that's always been, but I also at school is very important when teachers support you, because I remember having a headmaster that was always telling me, Carolina, you always ask why. And I said to him, why? He said, you see, you always say why. But then what are kids meant to say, or ask why? That's why I'm a journalist today, because luckily, I live out of asking why to politicians, but I understood it was about the right time, right moment asking also.
And I love it. Even as you explained, this is why I became a journalist, you use the word why.
Why?
Curiosity is obviously incredibly important to your soul. And that's amazing, because it is the essence of a journalist. Ask why.
And teachers should always encourage kids to think. I also think so. And a kid that asks why is a kid who wants to know, to inquire. Something doesn't work when he thinks about the reality and has questions. So we should, I think, teachers should help kids who are very curious to deal with it in a way, instead of being grounded, or instead of being punished for asking.
Yeah, 100%. Teachers should definitely allow kids to inquire and to ask. And I know, I have a niece and a nephew, and sometimes it could be a little frustrating when they start asking 20,000 whys. And it gets to a point where you are just like, oh my gosh, okay, that's, that's enough. But it is fair and true to say that we really should not repress them asking why, because this curiosity is meant to be explored. And I'm so happy for you that you continued asking the whys, and you didn't let any teacher hold you back, or the fact that other students didn't have the ability or the strength or the courage to ask the whys. You did. That's beautiful. And then another point, because when we were speaking over the phone, you said words to me that that stayed with me, and it was one of the times where you asked why there was no carnival during that time, and your teacher explained to you there was a war and soldiers are dying. That's some really powerful and strong words for a 9-year-old to hear, and so much so that during your career now, words like these, I think, have in some way shaped your experience as a journalist, and you ended up becoming a war correspondent at one point, right?
Yes. I ended up being a war correspondent, and obviously, war in the field is not what war looks like in your mind. It's very different in every single aspect, and conflict is very different. You have to be very prepared mentally, physically. Sometimes you have to carry, an armor jacket. You have to have knowledge. You have to be in the place at the right time and respect the people, respect the conflict, respect the views. You have to be prepared, you cannot let yourself be led by the emotions. And if you want to do that, you have to do it at the right time. And that's my advice. I had to go a long way. I didn't get there, extremely young. And I think that was good for my brain. You watch horrible scenes. You talk to people who have suffered a lot, and you have to talk about very complicated issues. And always, the less young you are, the less likely you are, dragged into things and talk about from your heart. You have to have a heart always as a journalist, but you have to see the whole picture and take a step back and hear everyone. And what I realized covering conflict is, I always keep saying that when there is a conflict, it's because everyone is right. They all think they hold the truth. There will not be a conflict otherwise. And just listen to them and let them talk. And it's about them, their conflict, respect it, you just try to explain it.
And Caro, I'm wondering, so when was the first time you decided I want to be a war correspondent? And what was the first war you started covering?
So it was a natural process where when I finished high school, I like the international war. And I like knowing, and I like asking. So where do I fit? Journalism, politics, political science. So I first thought, let's do it step by step. So first I studied communication science and journalism. So I felt I was prepared in terms of skills, abilities, but I didn't have knowledge. Sometimes I believe that, beyond journalism, also it's good that you have something extra backpack, that covers you. And I felt I didn't have enough knowledge, even though since I was leading my parents always with the news and we read a lot. So I decided it was time for me to get a master's in international relations and then a master's in security studies and terrorism. That postponed a little bit my career because it was a lot of time into studying. But, as I said, I respected it so much that I feared I would get burned. I feared it, so I decided to work for a while as a correspondent. I worked for newspapers, La Vanguardia, Agencia F, news agency, Spanish news agency. I became a correspondent for print journalism. I started getting experience, but behind the scenes as a print journalist. That gave me a lot of confidence. And then at the right time, right day, one time in London, I was living there for 5 years and I got the chance to be on TV. I was 28. And I felt this is the right time. This is the right time. Now I'm not scared. I feel confident. I just felt it. And since then, things happen. You start working for one media, then the other. And with my degree in security studies and specialized in counterterrorism, I started learning Arabic. It was a matter of time, but don't rush. It will happen. And that's my advice. Be prepared and get ready and do it when you feel you're ready, not before, not after. And this is a different process for everyone. I was lucky enough to do it at the right time. And the first conflict I covered when I moved to Lebanon, just when months before ISIS, took over Syria and Iraq. So when the war in Syria at the same time, between Bashar al-Assad and the rebels, a lot of what's going on there. So it was the right timing, right experience, right confidence, right moment. So
yeah, and you're an abundant wealth of knowledge. And just so people know, I used to work with Caro in Washington, D.C., and we shared so much. And she truly is extremely knowledgeable, especially about the conflicts in the Middle East. So I remember every time I had to go out and report on it, especially in 2017 under the Trump administration, where he was considering killing Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria. Caro definitely was a huge help to me in helping me understand the conflict. So I thank you for that because
you were a great friend and colleague, Emiliana, to me always. We had a great time working together. And that's actually one of my best experiences work-wise was working with you, having you next to me every morning.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing. We did have a lot of fun. So, Caro, I wanted to ask you when when you began covering the war and when you were sent out there on the field, do you feel like the organizations that you worked for sent you with enough preparation, enough training? And how did you feel being on the field?
I want to talk about it from different angles. As for the help from the channels, obviously, I bought all my security, all my gear, all my so let's get started. I moved there and I got several channels sponsoring me. I was lucky enough because you can be a freelancer in different ways. Some freelancers go to the field and they don't press sale. They just go and risk all their money and they might lose it all. In my case, I was quite lucky. I was one in a few because today you have to be lucky even to say you were freelancer, right? Because unfortunately there is not many contracts in the media. So I was a freelancer where I was lucky to have a contract, like an agreement where I would have to do a story every week for a next channel or another channel. And I was a correspondent. So let's say there was an earthquake in Nepal, like it happened. And they would call me in the middle of the night, say, Carolina, can you go there? I would say, yes. You put your expenses ahead, but we're gonna buy you this amount, you know. So they would always cover my expenses, and I would make an earning, of course. And I was very lucky because I would go knowing I would be paid for my work. It's not everyone gets paid. But said that, I knew how things were in the field as soon as I landed in Lebanon. I knew many colleagues didn't have helmets, didn't have bulletproof vests, didn't have anything. I thought for a while of asking my friends if I could borrow from them, but you know, it has to be well done, well shaped, well tailored. It's stupid to wear a vest if you don't have the right plates. If the plates are old, you don't know if the person who is giving it to you, how long time ago they bought the plates. It depends the sort of conflict you're covering. If it's the sort of plate you need, you know, if you use a place you have to run, you need something light. I mean, you have to be aware and learn about it. So I went to Spain and I bought my own light vest. I went to the same manufacturer who does the vest for the Spanish army. And they did one as a civilian for me, different colors, same press, tailor. And that was my little thing that I always used to carry, but only when necessary. I said before that conflicts don't look like in real life as they look like sometimes even on TV or as you think. And that's true, you know, you cover conflict and sometimes the front line is stagnant. It's not moving, nothing's happening. But I always compare it to, you know, the images of the tsunami in Thailand, the calm before the storm. You never know when something can happen. I remember going on 4x4s, entering Syria with the Lebanese army. It looked like Afghanistan, like rocks, dry mountains. And, you know, it was not exactly ISIS, it was Al-Nusra Front, which was an affiliate of Al-Qaeda, the ones on the other side. But you don't know when it might happen. You have to prepare always. And as a journalist and as a woman, the most dangerous thing I could say I always was aware of, it's kidnapping. This is a very important point. Freelancers, sometimes they want to save money in fixers, translators, drivers. Don't ever save a penny, never. Always try to get the same fixer that the biggest organization gets, because I always say, if you want someone to protect you, that person has to make a living out of it, has to make enough money, has to be making a living for a while, has to be known. It has to be someone is not going to sell you, right? I know it's hard to say when you have no money, no sponsoring. I know it. But if you have no sponsoring, no money, think it twice before you go, or get someone whose trajectory you don't know, because you don't know who that person is. And you don't know if someone pays him more and you get kidnapped and sold to an organization. So that was the most difficult part. And then also lying to my parents. There is a moment where you have to lie to your parents. You cannot tell them where you go because they suffer, you know. So you have to lie a little bit to your family because your parents, they suffer.
So one point before I ask you the next question, first, thank you for the valuable information that you're sharing with us, especially during this time with the war in Ukraine, because it is your life as a journalist. And if you know, like Caro is saying right now, if you don't have the right company, the right people protecting your life and not paying them enough, then what value are you really putting on your life? Are you valuing your life enough? And if you're not willing to pay the money, or you don't have the resources, again, what Caro said, think it twice and maybe don't go to the war, because you are putting your life in danger, and no job is worth your life, especially if the people protecting you are not making enough money as a living. Then it'll be an easy way for them to sell you, like Caro said, for you to get either kidnapped or robbed or who knows, and you know, they make more money out of it. So your life is first. Put value into your life, and if you don't have the money or the resources to get the safety that the biggest organizations are getting for their correspondents, don't go. And the second question I wanted to ask you is, well, that was a point, but the question I wanted to ask you is, did you lie to your parents about going to the war just because you didn't want them to know that you were there so that they wouldn't suffer, or what kind of lie was it to protect them?
First of all, when you move to the Middle East, when I moved there, I told them, no, I'm not going to cover conflict. I'm just going to cover the Middle East. But I knew, you know, I had a master's in security and counterterrorism. So And it was a matter of time that I would, get the permissions from the military or the army, or it's not always the permission from the military. If you go to a certain front line, you need the permission from the militia who's controlling that area, from the organization, because in those countries, the state doesn't control the whole totality of the borders. How would I lie to my parents? I would tell them I would go somewhere, but not precisely to the front line, because normally there is checkpoints. There is 3-4 checkpoints before the last checkpoint. Or I would tell them I would go to a certain area, but you always lied about the real risk. As I said, the risk at the time was kidnapping. That was something it took very, very, very highly, in the sense that when you go and you know that can happen, you have to leave everything within your house. Like in my case, my passwords, my bank accounts, a message, a note, I had it in the drawer. I would put it back on my desk when I came back. You never know what can happen to you, and you have to cover a story, but you can be kidnapped. So that was difficult, but I would always, I read once a woman said, you always have to bring your glasses with you, because if you wear lenses, no one's gonna give you need to see, so I'm short-sighted. I would always carry my glasses, tampons for women, like for the period. Those things that, no one is gonna provide. I mean, that seems stupid maybe, but what else can you carry, I mean, nothing else. So yes, it always has to be there, but I always had friends in the field who knew where I was going, when I had to go back, who they would have to contact. So I just wanted my parents to be protected, not to suffer. They knew the whole story when I finished my work, and they are mad at me, but everything went well. And I want to say something, that the biggest risk I ever faced in the Middle East, it didn't come from terrorists, it didn't come from militia leaders, it didn't come from the front line, actually. It came from the police. I was arrested in Turkey for doing my job. And yes, it came from the police, from those who are meant to defend you. And that's tough, right? When you always think that the risk can come from those who are meant to be bad people, from those who actually, are not paid by the government, are not meant to protect you. But when you are arrested and you face risk because of those who are meant to protect you, don't do it. And actually, they want to put you in jail and stop you from working and disappear in one of those jails in Turkey. The country with more jail journalists in the world is Turkey. Let's remember that. That's maybe very scary, because I had time in my case to call the embassy and they found where I was. I have had friends who spent days and disappeared for days. So also, I always advise, have emergency contacts. Make the call at the right moment before they take everything away from you, so they know where you are.
So, Caro, thank you for sharing that, because I know this story, and I know a few other stories that we spoke about when we were working together in Washington, D.C. And sometimes being a woman on the field can be extremely difficult, and we face situations of harassment and sexual harassment. And I want to make sure that this is a safe space for you to share as much of your truth and your story as you want to, and as much detail as you want to go into. So I'm just gonna give you an open-ended question. And do you want to speak deeper about being a woman on the field, about this incident with the police? Or do you just want to give a word of advice to women who have faced sexual harassment on the field? And I think with that point and that question being made, we're making it very clear what Carolina went through without going into details.
Yes. Being a woman in the Middle East has advantages and disadvantages. It has advantages because definitely Middle Eastern men, they want to please women. They want to protect you. So sometimes you are overprotected, but if you're a woman and use it the right way, you can get a lot, permissions, access, and that's good. So it facilitates your job very often. You can play sometimes even dumb, and you get far and you get a lot of information. And most women I know got very successful careers, access, and stories. And in that way, and of course you can be going to the front lines. Then it's living in the Middle East, and it's the law in the Middle East. And what happens to you when and it's not every person in the Middle East, it's the law, it's the rights women have, that those are given by Constitution. So in my case, I was, of course, in my case, I was harassed in the street. One day they wanted to rape me, and I stopped it. I stopped it, and I was very lucky. I stopped it, and I could defend myself. It's something you never know how you're gonna react. I could defend myself and punch back and get rid of that. But they wanted to put me in a car, and that's scary when they threw you to the floor, you defend yourself, you fight back, and then you realize how it could have ended, right? You could have ended in a car, taken who knows where. There was a co-driver, co-pilot. So it was the co-pilot who came for me, and a driver, 2 men. It was next to my house. So I went to the police, and I can never forget that moment where I went with my friend who I was meant to meet. I took a taxi quickly, and I went to see her. Said, "Let's go to the police. I know this is street. I know there is cameras. I know these guys can be found. I know it's almost my street." So went to the police, and we told them the story. And it was all men in the police station, very old police station, my neighborhood. We went there. We told them the story, and they said, "Mabruk," which means congratulations. I said, "Mabruk what?" "Mabruk, you won." I said, yes, I didn't get raped. Is that winning? That's a horrible thing to say, and a horrible experience. You never win when you stop a crime from happening. You just save yourself from something worse. And so what do you want now? What I want is justice. What I want is these people to be found, caught, and put in jail. What I want is another woman not having to go through that, because I don't know if they wanted to, what they wanted to do with me. What are other women going to go through if they don't react like that? Not everyone reacts this way or is prepared to act like that, or punch back. And nothing happened ever. There was no justice, nothing happened. I went to my embassy, they worked hard, they tried to force an investigation to happen, and I cannot complain. My country tried their best for me, but nothing moved on, nothing happened. And I don't know what happened to those men, if more women were raped or tried to be raped. And that's the upsetting side of it. Men think that because you escape this situation, you are okay. You're not, you want justice.
Caro, and let me ask you something. At that point, when the police officers said that to you, how did you feel? And I'm wondering if you feel like powerlessness was one of the feelings that you had at that moment.
I felt a little bit like that, but I also felt that there was no way I could change them. I saw it. I can remember the situation, the desk, and then being really like, they meant it. They meant it. Wow, that's great. Good. What's left to do? Nothing. Great. You're a winner, strong woman. And I was like, they meant it from their hearts. But it's culture, it's the law that systematically neglects women from having justice. And they were blind in that way, right? So I knew there was nothing. I had to try. We have to try. I don't hate them. They were happy for me, truly happy, but that's not the answer you expect from the police, right?
Right, at all. And I want to applaud you, and I want to honor you and thank you for having the courage to speak up about what happened to you, especially to go to the police and report it, even though you were in a Middle Eastern country where women don't often have the rights that they deserve. Because you did everything you're supposed to do. You stepped into your power, you reported it, and unfortunately, sometimes the police or authority figures don't act or take the responsibility in the matters that they should. But as a woman, the fact that you're sharing your story and letting other women know as well how you got through it, I think can be extremely empowering and is part of your mission. You know, there's a reason why you went through that situation, and just being able to speak your truth freely right here, right now, even though those police officers didn't do anything to, ameliorate the situation or make it better, you are making it better right now by speaking about it.
But Emiliana, I also think this is our duty as journalists. We cover and make case tragedies. And, sometimes we put a microphone on people, people who have suffered a lot, but really suffered. And when bad things happen to you, if we don't share it, I ask myself, who am I to later on ask someone to share their story? Right? Mainly when we cover people who struggle and suffer. We have to also give example. It's not easy, but we have to, because we work in this field and we have to be persistent with what we do for a living and what we do in our lives. I believe journalists, we should be persistent in that way and share our stories. If we are the watchdogs, we cover tragedies, we have to speak out too. I mean, in our lives, we have to speak out. That's what we have to do. And when that happened to me, I shared it with my colleagues and never feel ashamed. That happened because you were working there. You were a woman who was working, was going out at night and nothing to blame. So the ones to blame are the ones who do those things. You are never the one to blame, right? So always speak out, never feel like you should not.
I completely agree. And I think that not everyone feels this way, but I feel very strongly about this as well. And it's just honoring the same principle that we ask everyone else to honor every single day: freedom of speech and freedom of press. So thank you for sharing that with me. Caro, I want to move on. I think we've already been speaking for almost 40 minutes. We can talk a lot.
We never stop, Emiliana.
We never stop. It's a beautiful conversation always. Oh my gosh, we would go. It was so funny, you guys. We would go out to dinner to have wine, and we would talk for
happy hour.
Happy hour that would end up, ending at like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. And we would write. I remember one night we finished at a hotel. I can't remember what we were doing, but when we were leaving, it was already like 10 p.m. I don't know if you remember, and we both like grabbed our little scooters from the street and went back home. So we would, oh my gosh, yeah, it was a really good time. Caro, so I know we spoke about this over the phone a little bit too, and I know you're going through a process right now that you really can't speak about and you have to honor, but I want to make you guys aware, Carolina is part of 7 journalists who sued the U.S. broadcasting arm, Voice of America, for wrongful dismissal under the former administration of President Donald Trump. So these journalists, and if you guys remember, I interviewed Bricio Segovia about it as well, alleged that the U.S. Agency for Global Media fired them based on vague and false accusations of disloyalty to America. And 3 of the journalists in this lawsuit actually were forced to leave the country. Do you wanna speak about that situation? Is there anything that you want to say about that?
Yes, obviously I cannot talk about the legal process, but I can say some things. As I said before, when something happens to you and is not fair, when someone does something wrong to you and you know it's wrong, and you know you can win, go speak out, talk, sue. That's the only way. You have rights, we have rights, which just don't know sometimes. I'm an immigrant still, and I had rights. And we talk, I cover a lot Latin America, and there is many migrants from Latin America. And sometimes I find it hard for them to talk to me because many people are scared. There's many immigrants here. In my case, all of this was because I was a foreign national. And I was discriminated for being born abroad, and they played with our national origin and try to say we were of national threat, these things that is shocking, when you work in a democracy, in journalism. But still, as an immigrant, I had rights. I made use of my rights, and I'm doing the right thing. I'm speaking out in the court or wherever it has to be. And that's the only thing I can say. When bad things happen to you, again, act. No one will do it for you. And it seems like uphill. I've struggled a lot, faced a lot of emotionally. I could not believe it that was happening to me. I was a story. How could it happen in the US that a journalist could be dismissed for false accusations? But then, things start stabilizing. New administration came, things came back to normal. And sometimes some people lead agencies, we have to make sure, people are at the right place for the right reasons. And journalism is protected enough. And journalists are protected from political interference and from people trying to do damage. But now I'm very happy. I'm working for the agency, and I'm glad it's like it used to be. And but still, those who harm should be held accountable. And as you said, that was before in the previous administration. And the case is there, and I have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, and just to give a little bit of background to people listening as well, Carolina, under the former administration, I remember was forced to leave VOA for a short period, right?
Yes, they canceled my visa on the grounds that I could be a threat because I was born in Spain. I was a foreigner based on national origin, and my contract had been renewed, but they decided to not renew my visa on purpose. So to get rid of, the mission was to get rid of all the foreigners from the agency. It's like cleansing, in a way. But they didn't. You have to fight. I stood, and the right people also stood, and many good people there, and I fought. People fought for me too. I found out there were many amazing people who did good things. And time puts things in the right place, and good wins always. I believe in the short, middle, or long term, the good wins. So you have to fight. Have to have a little bit of strength and be ready, because what you're gonna face is gonna be tough.
And then so you were
and mentally ready, because it's damaging mentally to go through all of that. But you will emerge again, and things will be back in place and in order.
Yeah. And then so you were forced to leave for a little bit, also under the allegations that you could be possibly a spy. But then the administration switched, elections came around, and now obviously VOA is operating under a Biden administration, so things changed a lot, and you were able to go back to work for the agency. So I'm very glad that you have a job again, because I know how frustrating and stressful that was for you, trying to figure out a way to stay in the United States. And
as an immigrant, and
you were committed to making it happen, and you made it happen. You're here.
I was committed that they would not force. I always say I was committed that no one would force me to leave because of political reasons. I came to this country when I wanted. I've been working always. And if I have to go, it's when I decide to go, right? No one who I don't know with a job up there is gonna decide when I'm leaving. I've been working here always and contributed. And when it's the time, I decide, but you decide when it's your time. Don't let others decide for you.
I love that. Caro, so with that said, what is one thing you would like to help improve the news industry?
Wow. First of all, we go through so much stress. It's hard to sleep sometimes. When you sleep, news happen. It's like you're not doing your job. I would say we need support. We need to be taken care of. We have a job that many people don't understand. Now being a journalist is like people have started to disrespect us. We put our hearts, our brains, our minds, our ethics. And more people don't say it, and it hurts me. It hurts me. It hurts watching others being insulted. We need support, emotional support. We need something has to happen. So we stop this craziness from, we have to distinguish what's opinion, what's being a journalist, what's having, so using social media is very different from being a journalist, real journalist from the real journalist. We have to establish a wall, and because people don't really see it any longer, I believe. And all my colleagues I always work with, they are up to their highest standards. And it hurts me working in a field where suddenly people almost disrespect you. And what do we have to change? Also our conditions, because not only we face tough times in the streets, tough times working on social media when, how many trolls insult your work, people who are paid just to cast insults on you. And we not only face criticism, and we don't really get paid too much to pay help for our own, to have money and to live in a villa and say, okay, I can do that. No, we don't really get paid that much, and compared to how much we're exposed. But one single mistake can ruin your career. One wrong word at the wrong time. And when you publish something today, tomorrow it's old. We face anxiety, stress, deadlines. We don't even eat. Not because they don't let me eat, because I have no time. And it's 9 p.m. I realized I didn't eat. Sometimes you don't even go to the toilet. And no one, I have to be honest, you have your break for eating. And of course, of course I get paid every extra hour. I work for the government and I have all the rights and all the right conditions. But it's yourself, you are so much immersed into it that sometimes you get sucked in, and I don't know what happened to us, that we're not healthy. We don't look after ourselves, our health, our eating while working, our sleep, and our stress and anxiety because of work. So, and it starts with us. And so it's a mix of being taken care of and take care of ourselves. And obviously, the salaries are not good. I am again saying I'm lucky, but in my country, in Spain, I barely know anyone who studied with me who is actually working as a journalist. People should be able to follow their dreams and do what they want. And not many people can live out of being a journalist to start with. Obviously, we have to do it everything. But well, you get used to the abnormal. It shouldn't be that way. But human beings, we all get used to. And when we get used to eating, carrying so many weight, going here, going there, we make anxiety and stress something normal, which is not. So we have to realize that we do a lot of work, and that's not normal. We like it, we agree with it, yes. And people like me have good work conditions, many don't. Make visible and let the world know that it's not just fancy you're on TV holding a microphone. This is just a minute a day that you get to see. There's so much behind it you don't see, or people don't have the chance to see.
Wow. Yeah. And I love that. I love that you said we make stress and anxiety normal, and it's not. And it's really not, because a lot of journalists are operating under constant anxiety and constant stress, and that's leading to a lot of breakdowns. So definitely take care of your health in every single level. Caro, is there anything else you'd want to add before we leave?
Yeah, so I just want to honor, while in the Middle East, the brave people, brave civilians, brave kids, brave refugees, brave farmers I've ever met. To me, those are the people who really made an impact on me, really. So to every single farmer, refugee, or everyone I've met, they could watch me now, they always stay here in my head. It's not just a story, they live in your memories beyond that. So I would like to say something is always respect the people you talk to, and always understand that it's people who suffer when you cover conflict. So be aware of that.
Be aware of that. Yeah, I love that. And honor those people that you speak to, honor the people that tell you their stories. So I honor you for telling me your story. Thank you. I'm so grateful. And this has been such a beautiful and healing conversation. So thank you for being here, Caro, today.
Thank you, Miliana. It's always lovely. I love you so much. And I have the memories of our time together always in my mind.
I love you more, Caro. Thank you.
Soon.
Journalists, this one's for you, to help you heal, to help you understand your worth, and to help you know you're not alone. So share the love and subscribe to Spotify and YouTube and follow us on Instagram. The Awakened Journalist is proud to present Media Healers by Emiliana Molina Fajardo.